Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Can I call the City Council meeting to order? All rise and salute the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Would you please remain standing for a moment of silence as we honor our servicemen and women and those who have given the ultimate sacrifice. Clerk will call the roll.
Anderson.
Yeah.
Kamel. Here. Condon. Here. Crow. Here. DeMaria. Linehan. Here. Murphy. Here. O'Malley. Here. Spadafora. Winslow. Here. Sika.
Greg, do we have anyone filming tonight? I don't see anything. Under the provisions of the open meeting law, I need to report that the Malden Access Television, the new name of UMA, will be video and audioing taping this evening's proceedings. First order of business.
Under Guests and Achievements, Clay Larson will appear before the Council to receive a certificate of appreciation from Councilor Winslow.
Hold on one second, Councilor Winslow. Great. Councilor Winslow.
Well, I think a lot of you know Clay Larson from 100 Cedar Street in Malden. He and his wife Naomi have been instrumental in a lot of activities in Malden. So I just really wanted, after all these years of service to the community, I think Clay really deserved a recognition from the council. So this is the recognition. Be it here by known that the entire Malden City Council offers the sincerest congratulations to Clay Larson. Clay has had an instrumental role in multiple projects that have improved the quality of life and aesthetics of Malden, including trail cleanups, installation of kiosks and benches along the Northern Strand Trail, the first section of the bike path community garden near Railroad Avenue, painting and installation of mural panels and sculptures for the Malden Art Line, and designing the River of Ties mural along Center Street. And we hereby honor Clay for his exemplary service to Malden and his generous and creative spirit that has enriched Malden and its people in so many ways. And so thank you so much. I also wanted to, as I was reading our Malden Reads book, Fahrenheit 451, I really came through, with a quote that I really thought really talks about Clay's spirit. This is one of the folks right towards the end of the book. Everyone must leave something behind when he dies, my grandfather said. A child, or a book, or a painting, or a house, or a wall built, or a pair of shoes made, or a garden planted. Something your hand touched, some way so your soul has somewhere to go when you die, and when people look at that tree or that flower you planted, you're there. It doesn't matter what you do, he said, so long as you change something from the way it was before you touched it into something that's like after you take your hands away. The difference between the man that just cuts the lawn and a real gardener is in the touching, he said. The lawn cutter might just as well have not been there, but the gardener will be there in a lifetime. So Clay is really been, he started out as a landscaper when I first built him, but he's really become a gardener, an artist, and that's the type of thing. We actually, Bike to the Sea is going to donate this book to the Historical Society that's called Clay, the Man, the Muscle, the Artist and Friend, which really celebrates all of Clay's work. So just really thank you, Clay, for all your great work. And really, it's been probably too long coming, but now really great that we get a chance to celebrate all what you've done. Thank you so much for all your work.
Clay, would you like to have a few words?
Okay.
Steve, I just wanted to thank you, and I wanted to thank all of City Council. You know, I feel like I was the right person at the right time, and I was needed for the job. And it's been a great way for me to get to know the city of Malden, and I really appreciate, I've gotten to know many of you city councilors, had an opportunity to work with you individually, and the mayor. I remember when the mayor was had just won an election, and he and I took a ride in his car, and I gave him a tour of the trail, so he'd really understand what was going on. So it's been a great opportunity to get to know the city, and a quick vision for the future is that Bike to the Sea is a nonprofit that's doing really well. We have a new executive director, Yuri Lujko, so they're moving on forward, and we just heard today that the city of Lynch had its lease signed. So, you know, I worked with all 5 towns along the trail, so it was just a great way to get to know you guys, and I really thank you for recognizing me tonight. I appreciate it.
Okay, and if we could just have like a
we'll do that.
After people say, I'd like to take a minute to just get a photo as well.
Gotcha. Councilor O'Malley.
I just want to thank Councilor Winslow for initiating this. You know, it's been a pleasure working with Clay over the last 5 years. The amount of accomplishments that Councilor Winslow just stated, I mean, if you think about it, you know, Bike to the Sea, Quartermally Park, you've left your mark there, the community gardens, the art line. You know, Clay has been at the helm of creating the new Malden, and it's just been really amazing to watch it happen. Thank you, Clay.
And Clay, from the chair, let me just say that what you represent here this evening is the epitome of what we see happening in the city of Malden. We've got volunteers who are doing so many great things for our city, and to be recognized among all of the volunteers is certainly an honor that we wish to bestow upon you. So again, from all of us, congratulations. And now, councilors, why don't we step down to the podium, and we will have a picture taken with the recipient for this evening, Clay Larson. And before Clay leaves, Clay, would you introduce your bride to us? I think she's here in the audience. Naomi? Thank you, and again, congratulations. We have a public comment section here in the City Council, and we have 4 people who have signed that wish to address the Council. We have a 2-minute limitation, and so we're going to ask Warren Lynch from 412 Pleasant Street, who would like to come before the Council for his public comment. You have 2 minutes, sir. Excuse me, let me just... let me light up your fire here. Hold on. Gotcha. Go right ahead.
Hi, I'm Warren Lynch from 412 Pleasant Street in Ward 2. I'm here to speak on behalf of Mrs. Liu, who's being appointed to the Fair Housing Commission today. I'm really impressed by the work that she's done in Chinatown, stopping the big developers from taking chances at fair housing away from people, and I think she'll do a great job in Malden. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Second, Karen Lynch.
Hi, Karen Lynch. Do I give my address?
Yes, please.
24 Garden Street. I'm just coming because I know that you're voting on people for the Affordable Housing Trust Fund, and I did some stuff with Angie Liu a couple of years ago when I first became involved in housing, affordable housing, and I just thought she had has a lot of skills. And that's all. Thank you.
Thank you. Fiona? Is it Fiona Yu?
Yes.
Would you state your name and address for the record, please?
I live in Malden over 15 years. I live at 13 Clinton Street. I support Angie to be part of the Affordable Housing Trust. She has many years of experience in affordable housing development and security funding for affordable housing. Because of her experience and knowledge on the housing, she will be a great asset to the community. She has been active in Asian American community in Greater Boston area. Thank you.
Thank you. Maidu?
Good evening. I'm Maidu. I'm actually at 7 Atherstone Street, Boston, but I am property owner at 81 Adams Street and 112 to 126 Ferry Street, Malden. Business owner as well as a Malden High graduate. And with this unique position here, not being a Malden resident, but very active in Malden and know everything about Malden as much as I can get myself involved with the issues and the projects and all that goes on in the community, I feel that I would like to use myself as an example of one who is not currently a Malden resident, but is very vested and very passionate about the community. And in that sense, home is where the heart is, and my heart is in Malden. And I think that in support of the appointments for both Brian Slater and Angie Liu, I believe that not only that, and I specifically will attest to Angie's expertise as well as very passionate involvement in Malden for many years. When I was living in Malden, I was very involved with working with Angie to explore affordable housing opportunities in Malden, as well as other projects such as financial literacy and financial literacy and civic engagement. And she continued to be very, very involved. And in fact, with her professional position right now, the organization she leads has a resident, an office in Malden. In that sense, she's directly being in Malden. But I like to say is that back to the point of being home is where the heart is. Here we have two people who are non-Malden residents being appointed. And to that point, I would like to attest that sometimes when folks have the expertise and the right set of skills and what we're looking for in terms of background and the needs that we would like to bring to the needs and then the solutions that we like to bring to the table, that we will look beyond that requirement. And I was very happy to hear that there will be some proposition in the very near future to look into that ordinance and then to try to create some change so that we can actually, as a city, bring on the right sets of skills and not look at the physical address. And I like to stand right here and attest to that. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay. That concludes our portion of public comment. Next order of business.
We have 4 appointments. Paper 72-20, Mayor Reappointment, Anthony Rodriguez, 100 Tremont Street, Malden, as Director of Information Technology, said term to commence upon the confirmation by council and to expire March 1st, 2023. Paper 73-20, Mayoral Reappointment, Emily Kibler, 50 Concord Street, Apartment 1, Malden, Mass., as an Associate Member of the Board of Appeals, said term to commence upon confirmation by the council and to expire on March 1st, 2023. Paper 74-20, Mayor Reappointment, Yem Lip, 244 Kennedy Drive, Unit 706, Malden, as City Engineer, Director of Engineering Department, said term to commence upon his confirmation by the council and to expire March 1st, 2023. In Paper 75-20, Mayoral Reappointment, Salvatore Giannetti, 307 Pearl Street, Malden, as the Police Commissioner, said term to commence upon confirmation by the City Council and to expire on March 1st, 2023.
Thank you, Mr. Lucy. On Councilor Crow's motion to refer these appointments to the Personnel Appointment Committee, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed say nay. Those appointments will be referred to committee, will be discussed in committee, and then come back to the council for final approval. Next order of business.
Paper 76-20, Mayoral Reappointment, Kevin Jarvis, 64 Jewett Street, Georgetown, Mass., as the Veteran Service Officer Agent, said term to expire March 1st, 2023. Confirmation is not required.
On Councilor Crow's motion that we place that recommendation on file, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed say nay. They'll be placed on file. Next order of business.
Paper 77-20, Livery License, Ideal Park Limousine Service, Inc., 61 High Rock Road, Malden, 1 car. Renewal.
On Councilor Condon's motion that we refer that petition to the License Committee, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed say nay. That will be referred to the License Committee. Next order of business.
Paper 78-20, order that the Malden City Clerk notify inhabitants of the presidential primary to be held on March 3rd, 2020. To the inhabitants of the City of Malden who are qualified to vote in primaries, you are hereby notified and warranted to vote in your respective wards and precincts on Tuesday, the 3rd day of March, 2020, from 7 o'clock a.m. to 8 o'clock p.m., for the purpose to cast your vote in the presidential primary for the candidates of the political parties of the following offices. Presidential preference for this Commonwealth, State Committee Man, 5th Middlesex Senatorial District, State Committee Woman, 5th Middlesex Senatorial District, in the Ward Committee, all wards for the City of Malden.
On Councilor O'Malley's motion to approve, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed say nay. Those polling places have been adopted. Next order of business.
Paper 79-20, order that the City Clerk notify inhabitants of Ward 5, Precinct 2 of the special election to be held on March 3rd, 2020. To the inhabitants of Ward 5, Precinct 2 in the City of Malden who are qualified to vote in elections, you are hereby notified and warned to vote in your respective ward and precinct on Tuesday, the 3rd day of March, 2020, from 7 a.m. to 8 o'clock p.m., for the purpose to cast your vote in the special election for the candidates of the political parties for the following offices: representative in the General Court for the 32nd Middlesex District.
All right, Councilor Kamel's motion to adopt, all those in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed say nay. The order has been adopted. Next order of business.
Under committee reports, paper 80-20, Committee Report Public Properties, paper 58-20, order that the city authorize removal of the deed restriction once constructed. The dwelling located on the parcel must be occupied by the owner of the parcel from the property currently known as 129 Olive Ave. This parcel was sold by the city and recorded as book 47811, page 584. At the time of the sale by the city, the parcel was shown as Lot 106, Block 621, Map 147. Parcel is also shown as Lot 11 on plan recorded in Middlesex South Deeds, Plan Book 83, Book 83, Plan 24. Removal of the deed restriction shall not be at the expense of the city Owner of the property shall be responsible for all costs and expenses associated with the removal of the deed restriction and for preparing and recording any documents necessary to effectuate the order, subject to the city solicitor's review and approval prior to recording. After review and approval by the city solicitor, the mayor shall be authorized to sign any documents which may be prepared and required for recording in order to effectuate this order.
On Councillor O'Malley's motion to receive the committee report, all those in favor say aye. Opposed say nay. Committee report is received. Councillor O'Malley for the committee.
Thank you, Chair. This paper came out of Public Properties unanimously. We had a very informative discussion with the property owner and the ward councillor, as well as our solicitor's office, and we had the opportunity to review all of the documentation from when this was acted upon back in, I believe, 2005, if I remember correctly. We got the meeting minutes from the Public Properties Committee. We had all of the docket slips, so we knew what the votes were. We knew what the intention was. It is important to note that the only condition from the deed that is being removed is the requirement that the owner live in the property. They are looking to sell it. I believe Councillor Kamel may want to speak in favor of it, but I do know that he is in favor of this as the ward councillor. So I'd urge the council to vote favorably on this matter.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Kamel.
Yes, thank you very much, Councillor O'Malley, as chair of the Public Properties. Did a great job making sure we had all the I's dotted and T's crossed. Thank you once again. I brought this forward to request this deed restriction be removed. So a little bit of the backstory. Mr. John Ronan III, has lived at 172 Olive, down the end of Olive Ave for a very long time. When it was time for his son, also John, to move out and build a home, there was a parcel of city-owned land that the council had voted to allow the mayor to put up for public auction. It was publicly auctioned off and purchased by the family. They built a home there with several deed restrictions, one of which was the to be owner occupied. I believe the intent at the time there, and again, it should be noted that that deed restriction did not come from the council. That was put on afterwards by the mayor after the council had authorized to auction the land off. That was added as what we can see now is protection against it just being flipped. At the time, a lot of duplexes were being built, but the family lived there for 10 years, as happens with families sometimes. The kids get bigger, they have to move, relocate, found another home, unfortunately in another town, and selling the home now, and would become, it's been a bit of a process to kind of sell it with that restriction on there, having some a little bit of difficulty with potential buyers seeing that restriction and having some problems with it. So has asked us to remove it, and I fully support it, and I think it would be have no detrimental effect to our neighborhood. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Winslow.
Yeah, I know I'm familiar with Olive Avenue and the Ronans and the situation. I appreciate the councillors bringing all that information forward. This property was sold at auction, so it was paid a fair price at the time it was sold. The city has assessed it as a single-family home for fair market value, and I don't think there was any substantial value tied to this restriction from the city's point of view. So we've been collecting taxes. So I think at this point, knowing this type of restriction might affect a bank's ability to loan on a property, I think it's just holding something up. This is a nice, attractive home. It's the purpose of that restriction served its purpose for the city, and I think it's okay that we let it go. So I'm supportive of this paper. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Do we have a motion?
Move to approve. Second.
So we have a motion by Councillor Di Maria, second by Councillor Winslow, that we adopt. Is that? Okay. On the motion to adopt, the clerk will call the roll.
Anderson.
Yes.
Kamel.
Yes.
Condon. Yes. Crow. Yes. DeMaria. Yes. Linehan. Yes. O'Malley. Yes. Winslow.
Yes.
The motion has been adopted. Next order of business.
Paper 81-20, Committee Report, Rules and Ordinances. Paper 384-19, Ordinance. Be it hereby ordained that Chapter 3, Building Regulations, Section 3.37 of the Revised Ordinances of 2020, as amended, be further amended to require notice by posting with the city clerk and by mail to all property owners of land located within 500 feet of the property lines of the subject property for demolition permits, and further amend Chapter 6, Licensing Ordinance. Be hereby ordained that Section 6-49 of the Revised Ordinances of 2020, as amended, be further amended to require notice by posting with the city clerk and by mail to all property owners of land located within 500 feet of the property lines of the installation for all small cell petitions.
Who's going to speak on that? Okay, on Councilor Crow's motion to receive the committee report, all those in favor say aye. Opposed say nay. The committee report is received. Councilor Crow for the committee.
Thank you, Councilor. So a couple of weeks ago, we passed another notice to 500 feet around marijuana and a few other things, and that was separated from this because it was around zoning, and so we had to do a planning board ordinance committee meeting to change that and get their feedback. So this is just to follow. We met in committee last week. And so this one now makes everything uniform so that all notices, no matter if it's from the council or from zoning, is for 500 feet. So this, again, this makes it sort of uniform. It's not for, if you want this kind of license, you need 300 feet, this kind 500, this kind neighbor to neighbor. It just makes it a little more consistent so everybody notifies 500 feet out. So the committee voted on it unanimously, and I ask this council to do the same. So we'll make a motion to enroll.
So on Councilor Crow's motion to ordain, seconded by Councilor O'Malley, the clerk will call the roll.
This will be to enroll.
Right.
Anderson.
Yes.
Kamel.
Yes.
Condon.
Yes.
Crow.
Yes.
DeMaria. Yes. Linehan.
Yes.
O'Malley.
Yes.
Winslow.
Yes.
That order is enrolled. Next order of business.
Committee Report 82-20, Committee Report, Rules and Ordinance, Paper 466-19, be hereby ordained that Chapter 6 of the Revised Ordinances of 2020 be amended by adding provisions for shared neighborhood autos for passengers, SNAPs.
On Councilor Crow's motion to receive the committee report, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed say no. The committee report is received. Councilor Crow for the committee.
Thank you, Councilor. I'd actually would like to defer this to Councilor Winslow, who really was the author and kind of had this whole charge around the SNAP car. So I think he's the better person to kind of give that report.
Okay. Thank you. Councilor Winslow.
Thank you. So just give a little background on this particular draft ordinance we're talking about. So shared vehicles are becoming increasingly popular for folks because it's a way to save the expense and hassle of owning a car in a place like Malden, especially for the 40% of people in Malden who take the bus or the train. So there's interest in this. And also last year we had a sustainable transportation conference, and after that conference, one of the companies asked me to see if they could bring a pilot to Malden to share some electric vehicles here. So that's sort of what got this rolling. And so this is trying to create some benefits. You know, what is the benefit overall? Well, as someone who would use these, you would not have to own a vehicle and have all these expenses and have that hassle of parking. And you know, the evidence is this can have a big impact. Shared vehicles can provide access to a vehicle for 20 people versus an individually owned vehicle tends to be used by 2 people. So this could allow people to have access for a car, on days where they need it, but they would be using the bus or the train otherwise. And so then instead of parking like me, I just actually gave away my car because we're just sitting there 7 days a week or 6 days a week. So it allows people to kind of live without a car but have access when they need it. And so that's good for all of us because if we have fewer cars in the city, we're not competing for those parking spaces so much. So as this went to committee, we also had Parking Director Ron Hogan sit in. He mentioned that, in fact, there's already companies out there that are offering this kind of service under the radar screen. So they have set up apps. This is sort of like the Airbnb for cars, that people are putting their cars on our streets and getting money for that. And he's hearing from residents who are complaining about these cars, taking up space in a neighborhood. So we decided to make sure we crafted this ordinance to not only cover this electric vehicle pilot, but would also help cover these things. And as part of the discussion, I looked and researched what other cities are doing. So Boston actually this year is rolling out a program related to these shared vehicles, so that these are vehicles that would be available through your mobile phone. They would be parked on city streets. And this is really setting up a licensing program so that people cannot do this without setting up getting a license from the city. And we followed we put this under the part of our ordinances that are for taxis, liveries, and this is now just an extra section there. So that's what we're doing. And one of the things that came up as we were talking about this is looking at other communities. I mean, there's a value to our streets. So Boston is charging people for these licenses anywhere from $2,700 to $3,500 a year. So that's the value of that parking space. So, and literally, if this is a way that some companies that right now they're basically using our street for their business, and it's like they're putting their inventory on streets. So, and San Francisco, Seattle, and Toronto all have similar programs. So it's a way to, we're just trying to find a way to make this happen. Now, just to give perspective from the ward councilor's point of view, this ordinance is sort of a three-step process, because the ordinance would set up a licensing procedure. So a company would have to come, apply for a license to the city council to get permission to have these vehicles, and we have a cap on how many vehicles there are. So the first step would be passing this ordinance. The next step was actually going to go to the traffic commission, working with ward councilors to see where in your ward you might even want to have these, or whether you don't want them. But the traffic commission then would, just like they have taxi stands, there would be certain parts of some streets where they would be designated to be parked. So that's something the traffic commission would identify those zones. And then the final thing would then the operator would have to come in, apply for a license for those particular zones. And so that's the concept. So this is just the first step in doing that. So that's what I'm looking. We did the committee had these discussions. We had some back and forth. We made amendments to take into account the parking director's comments and committee members' comments. And, the committee voted it out favorably, and we're just looking for the information about what people are actually charging for these spaces. Our proposal is that for Malden, the price of one of these licenses would be $1,500 per vehicle. The vehicles would have to be registered in Malden, so we'd also get excise tax on those vehicles. And that if it's an electrical vehicle, it would be $500, but there would also be an obligation that there be creating some electrical vehicle charging stations that we don't have. So that's the basic proposal that's been discussed. So it's something, there's still steps. Like I say, we're limiting the amount to a total of 30 vehicles through the whole city. And then also the next step, if the ordinance is adopted, is then to get input from each ward councilor to see if there's a street or location where you'd be supportive of it, and then we would bring that kind of schedule of locations to the traffic commission to approve. Once that's set in place, then the licenses would be available for people to apply for. So anybody has questions, that's what the proposal is. So we have the discussion. I'd like to propose it to be enrolled tonight. That'd be my proposal. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Winslow. Councilor O'Malley.
And thank you, Chair. And I'd like to thank Councilor Winslow for his proactiveness on this topic. One of the things, to kind of sum it up into as few words as possible, one of the things that this ordinance does is it helps regulate something that already exists on our street and that is operating under no rules. And so this would allow us to put some rules in place so that we're able to, first of all, find out what is out in our community, and if they are operating, erratically or in a way that is a nuance to the neighborhood, we have an enforcement mechanism to ticket them and to prohibit their operation in our community. The other thing it does, as Councilor Winslow stated, is it requires any of the vehicles to be registered in Malden, so you don't have out of the city companies dropping cars here that are using our streets and aren't actually contributing any excise tax to our community. So it's those two things. It's regulating something that already is here and taxing the vehicles that should be registered here in Malden to Malden residents. So I am in support of this, and I would second Councilor Winslow's motion to enroll.
Thank you, Councilor. Councilor DeMaria.
Thank you, Councilor Anderson. And my question is to the sponsor. So we're limiting this to 30 vehicles citywide, and we're charging a $1,500 stipend per vehicle, as well as excise tax revenue. So just doing that real quick, that's an additional $45,000 to the city plus excise tax. Yes. Did I hear that correct?
Councilor Winslow, you can answer.
That's how much, at least preliminarily. I think we know that there's probably about 20 or 24 vehicles already being shared out there, and then there's another 4, a fleet of 4 that the electric vehicle provider wants to do. So that's 45,000 could be what we would secure if people come under the program and that type of thing.
And
so,
and my final question is they're all electric vehicles. And the mechanism that charges these vehicles, I would assume there's a cost to putting them in the city, and who would pick up that cost?
So one of the things that came out of the...
Oh, sorry. And that's my last question.
One of the comments that came out of the, through the committee was Ron Hogan was concerned that the vehicles that are already being used in these kind of programs are probably not electrical vehicles. So we didn't want to necessarily put in a restriction that would make residents may be already using these, so we didn't want to restrict what's already out there in that way. So, but what we've done is structured the fees so that the fees would be only $500 for the electrical vehicles and $1,500 for the 20 or so gas-powered vehicles that are out there. Okay. So, and I think the other thing, the other great thing is about these one fleet of vehicles, they're only 8 feet long. They're very tiny vehicles, so they won't take up much parking. So they have to be small electrical vehicles. So, and then it's really the obligation as the person comes in for the license. If they're licensing electrical vehicles, they have to show where in the city they're going to charge them. So hopefully they will, they'll have to make an arrangement that way, either installing one or just showing that. So that's, we're trying to encourage the electrical vehicles, but it's not mandated. But if you're coming in with a regular vehicle, you will pay the higher fees. So that's the proposal, yeah. So.
Thank you.
Yeah.
All set, Councilor DeMaria?
Yes, I am. Thank you.
Okay. From the chair, I'd just like to comment that I think that's a great idea. I think that efforts to encourage people not to have to buy their own private vehicles unnecessarily is a good thing. We've got too many cars on our streets, and this seems like a very positive way of eliminating some of that, particularly with all the newer people that are moving into these apartments that are being built. We don't need everyone to have an automobile, so having these vehicles available makes all the sense in the world. Councilor Linehan.
Thank you, Councilor. Thank you, Counselor. I had two questions related to the cars that are being deployed now that we know are utilizing the streets already. Do we have data around where those are sort of clustering, where the use is? And I have a second question, I guess, after that's kind of a different.
Who wants to answer that question?
Okay.
Councilor Winslow.
I know the one app is called Get Around, so you could literally, if you want data, you could pull up that app on your phone and you can see. So, but I know, anecdotally, Ron Hogan said he has been getting complaints from neighborhoods. I didn't know the specific ones, but I think it's, so I don't know specifically where, but, he has been getting complaints from neighbors of seeing, cars being taken out by unfamiliar people. And so, like I say, it's sort of an Airbnb situation for these. And as the parking department goes around, they do see, typically just like you see with Lyft and Uber, there's some, indication. They have a sticker that's indicating this. So, and one of the requirements of the ordinance is that they be designated and have some indication that they are that. But so I can't say specifically, but and they played a little bit of cat and mouse because as they've done some enforcement. I mean, right now our only enforcement is that you can't park a vehicle in the same space for 72 hours. So that's a little bit of the cat and mouse is that they might ticket or notice someone and they'll move it. So that's the type of thing. We don't have kind of tighter restrictions on these type of vehicles right now.
Yeah.
So this would automatically make it a violation of the ordinance if you don't have the license. So yeah.
So I will say I think that's a good thing to consider because I know the sort of the half of my ward in Ward 3 that is not permit parking. We do get a lot of folks who drive in and like park right on the line of where you can leave cars for free all the time.
Right.
So I could see that being an issue, particularly as we try to target, if we want folks to not have a car that live a little further from the T, that's a good thing, but we also want to make sure we're not opening ourselves up to these companies abusing that in a way.
Yeah, and I think that was one of the motivations to have the fee, so that you're not just parking it like you have a car up in Peabody and then you rent it out when you're parked in Malden.
Right.
And then, so that's part of it is we're trying to make sure that that Malden's capturing that value and we're not creating a loophole for people to get around the parking, restrictions in the wards that are there. So
okay.
So like I say, that's part of the motivation to have a fee. And like I say, all the communities that are doing this, they're basically trying to charge a market rate for where that space is. So to really discourage that. But like I say, I looked at Toronto, they literally have a specific listing of saying this street at this location is X car and Y car. So it gets very specific. So we'll get to that level of nuance when it goes to the Traffic Commission, but the Traffic Commission is not going to do that until there's an ordinance in place that really kind of sets up the structure to even allow this.
So my second question that's not really on the same topic, but just getting back to sort of the charging issue, do we have an inventory for how many EV charging heads are available to the public at this point in the city?
I know this Eric Rubin our facilities director came and mentioned that we are working to get 15 stations installed over the next this year. So he's still working out the locations. I mean, I know there's a new one right out on Exchange Street, and so so we're working to get some public charging stations out there, and so this would be maybe another incentive to have some maybe in some of the public parking lots at Maplewood or Linden Square or whatever. So that's what we're looking to do.
That's great. I would definitely be in favor of that. I know the one on Exchange is great to see, but there's also no time limitation on it, which I think we do need to start thinking ahead of how we're going to regulate some of the parking. It's great now when they're kind of just starting to be adopted, but mark my words, as soon as that construction's done, if we don't have a time restriction, there's going to be a Tesla there all day, every day, parking and walking to the T. And we want people to obviously use the T and be able to use the parking around City Hall and other places, but I think we need to think about if you're going to be there to charge, there's maybe a 2 or 3 hour window, and then you have to move along. It's not free parking all day just because you've been fortunate enough to buy an EV early.
So that's what I guess we'll be working that out. But yeah, like I say, it'll be the actual where if it's an electric vehicle. That'll be part of the licensing process where you sort of designate where your charging spaces are. So.
Thank you, and thank you for working on this.
You're welcome.
Thank you, councilors. Councilor Condon.
Thank you, Councilor Anderson. just the fact that you're comparing it with Airbnb. I have no great love for Airbnbs in my entire neighborhood. I'm sure you did a lot of work on the paper, and I'm sure it has its merits, but I never had the chance to vote against Airbnbs in the neighborhood, but I think I'll vote against this. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Condon. Any other comments? So I believe we have a motion on the table to enroll by the committee has recommended enrollment, seconded by Councilor Di Maria. The clerk will call the roll.
Anderson.
Yes.
Kamel.
Yes.
Condon. No. Crow.
Yes.
Di Maria.
Yes.
Linehan.
Yes.
O'Malley.
Yes.
Spatafora. Winslow.
Yes.
Passes
Okay.
8-1.
That paper has been enrolled.
7-1, I'm sorry.
The count is 7-1?
7-1.
Okay. Next order of business. Councilor Crow.
I'd like to actually make a motion to suspend docket rules for the purposes of receiving a committee report, the Personnel and Appointments Committee report.
On the motion to suspend docket rules, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say nay. Docket rules are suspended. Councilor Crow.
Thank you, Councilor. So the Appointments and Personnel Committee had met and interviewed a number of people for the Human Rights and Fair Housing Commission. One of the holdup was we weren't sure if we had one or two or how many appointments we needed to be making. So my charge was to go back and sort of figure out that and bring that back to the committee so we can make a final recommendation. And we met some really fantastic people, and all would have been great on any of these boards. I think we're seeing that more and more. Some of the people that are coming up and stepping up into the community. But the committee voted to appoint Megan Volsey from Washington Street, Malden, as a resident member. Both are resident members of the Human Rights and Fair Housing. She has a bachelor's of arts from political science and psychology and a minor in urban studies. And she's really done a lot of work. She had a lot of energy. She just graduated college and she moved back to Malden and really went to get in there. And I do know the first day that the committee met, she showed up just to make sure that she knew what was going on, even though she wasn't on the committee yet. So on behalf of the committee, make a motion that we appoint Megan Volsey to the Human Rights and Fair Housing.
On the motion to appoint Megan Volsey, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say nay. That confirmation is confirmed. Next
And
order of business.
as it turns out, we did have a second appointment, so which we were very grateful, again, within the people that we met. We met with the Nancy Solomon, who is from Bond Street, and she's a manager of diversity, equity, inclusion, and is an attorney by trade. And she does, works on the city's and Somerville equity opportunity policy and disability complaints, ADA complaints. So she really brought a whole wonderful background of all the work, and she's pretty new to Malden. So it's exciting that even new people moving to Malden really want to get involved. So make a motion that we appoint Nancy Solomon to the Fair Housing and Human Rights Commission.
On the motion, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed say nay. This is a second appointment that's been made. Next order of business.
So I would like to make the motion to take the two table papers from the table. Apparently, people knew. So the table to take table 3-20, the mayoral appointment of Brian Slater, and 4-20, the mayoral appointment of Angie Liu.
On the motion to take those two off the table, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say nay. Those appointments are off the table. Councilor Crow.
So a few weeks ago, we had our interviews with these two mayoral appointments, and the committee voted to appoint. And then a couple of questions came up, and one of those questions was about residency. These two people do not have Malden residency, so I was tasked to reach out to the city solicitor. And although we do have an ordinance that does have all people from boards and commissions need to be Malden residents, we do have some exceptions. And because that's sort of the umbrella, and we have a assistant city solicitor if we have any other follow-up questions that I can't answer, that we have sort of an umbrella ordinance. However, when we crafted this ordinance, we said 4 out of the 7 members need to be Malden residents, and we were looking for people that really had lots of expertise in this area. So the 2 people that the mayor had appointed had a great deal of expertise in this area, and they aren't Malden residents, but because of its specificity in that ordinance, it kind of became one of the exceptions. So in our overarching Malden have to be a Malden resident. We have the Board of Health that doesn't have to be one, and now we'll have to change that ordinance just to make it clear, I think, to clean it up. And then one of the other exceptions is the Affordable Housing Trust Fund. So the other question was asked about conflict of interest, because one works with an affordable housing developer, a nonprofit, and one is from financial services. So that question was asked too, and so City Solicitor Fallon did look at it up, and then there are 2 areas that it could be a conflict of interest, and that's Mass General Law, Chapter 268A, Section 19, and some parts of Section 23. However, City Solicitor also reached out to the Ethics Commission, and because there is nothing in front of them it's all speculation. What if? How about that? That was not something that could be sort of ruled on. So we can appoint these 2 people. I do think, and if we have any questions, we can ask those. But that we do require them to do a disclosure to the state, a disclosure form, and then it's really up to them. So if a situation comes to that, to the trust fund, that could be even an appearance of a conflict of interest, then it really is on them to actually get an ethics ruling, which takes some time, up to probably 30 days. So, and again, it's, we could decide on any board or commission, whether they're Malden residents or not, they're going to have a conflict of this, they're going to have a conflict of that. And I don't think that it really is it's something that we can sort of speculate on what may or may not happen on any board or commission. So for those 2 reasons, again, we can ask some questions if anyone has, and from our city solicitor or Evan Sparizzi from the Redevelopment Authority.
I don't see any lights lit. I do see Councilor Di Maria and Councilor Winslow. So Councilor Di Maria, we'll go you first.
Thank you, Councilor Anderson, and thank you to our Chair of Personnel and Appointments, Councilor Crowe. There's been a lot of work that she put through on this for over the last 2 or 3 weeks. I do want to remind the Council that most of our boards and commissions are pro bono. These are people or residents that come and they give time of themselves, out of their lives, to help move the city of Malden. While I understand that residents of Malden are so important to serve on these, and the diversity of our residents to serve on these, this is a specialized affordable housing committee that we all have been waiting for over 3 years. We've identified the problem, and I really urge people to look at these applicants, that they are proven specialized leaders in their fields, and that's really what we need on this. So I will be supporting it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor. Councilor Winslow.
Yeah, I'm appreciate being your representative to the board, and I know the majority of people on the board are going to be Malden residents, so I'm confident to work with people to make sure that our money is well spent. And one of my motivations and why I want to support these two candidates is that we're going to have a pool of local money, but it costs tens of millions of dollars sometimes to do affordable housing. And having people who have done those type of projects and know where those funds are and how to tap them will more than multiply our local money. So I think it's important to have that kind of expertise. And Malden, one of the things I've worked in other cities, and Somerville has a community development corporation that's been very effective in getting affordable housing in Somerville. And my daughter lives in Somerville today because of that. I've worked with the North Shore Community Development Corporation of Gloucester. So Malden has not had that type of corporation. And the Asian Community Development Corporation has taken on and established an office here, has built relationships here. So they're sort of our home team right now. And so I'm very supportive of that in terms of that. I think as much as, like I say, it's great when there's Malden experts we can tap, but we haven't had this before. We haven't recently developed affordable housing, so I think it's good. We have people that from some great organizations that are doing this and are doing some great projects, so I'm supportive that way. On the conflict of interest issue, I appreciate Councilor Crow's effort to look into this. I've taken a little bit of look at this into this myself, and I think it does essentially, I mean, we all sign our conflict of interest forms. We know the basic things. You can't, as you sit on a board, act on the interest of some organization that you're a part of when you're on a board. So I think it's very clear. Those all apply. And so I think there's some unique situations here, but I think those are all speculative at this point. And my understanding is that, like in Somerville, they do have people do these disclosures ahead of time, and it's worked out. So I'm comfortable with moving ahead and then asking these candidates to do the conflict of interest outreach to the state, because we can't really make the legal decision on their behalf or get the legal opinion that the State Ethics Commission would issue to kind of give them a safe harbor. So we can do what we can and point out that they should do that, but I don't think it's inherently holds back. They can serve, and I think we should go ahead. So thank you.
Thank you, Councilor. Councilor Condon.
Thank you, Councilor Anderson. There's no question about their qualifications for sure, but I do want to clarify one thing. We reached out to the State Ethics Commission, and they didn't actually issue an opinion on this. Is that correct?
Councilor Crowe, would you like to respond to that?
Yeah, so on which issue are you talking about?
On whether or not it would be a conflict for them against our ordinance.
No, we didn't reach out to the ethics about against our ordinance, because that is ours. So, and again, you can ask Attorney McNaught, but because there's specificity in this ordinance, that it kind of makes it one of the exceptions. Right now, we have to be a Malden resident on all boards and commissions, except for the doctor of the Board of Health, or if there's something else, that is written in there. I don't have the ordinance in front of me. I apologize. So this one, because we have it in the ordinance for affordable housing, it makes it one of the exceptions under the umbrella ordinance of all boards and commissions. If we did not say that 4 out of the 7 members needed to be, then all members would have needed to be, because it would have fallen under that ordinance.
Okay. Is that the opinion of our law department that supports that?
Councilor McNaught, would you come forward, please? Your question again, Councilor Condon?
Yeah, is that the opinion? Is your opinion from the law department consistent with Councilor Crow's?
Yes, with regard to, we're not talking about conflict of interest. We're talking solely about whether or not your ordinance enacted enables them to sit even though they're not residents of the city? The answer is they can.
Okay. My next question is, if they're appointed and in the position and people approach the Ethics Commission to rule on whether or not their connection to their companies potentially is a conflict of interest, would they give you an opinion on that, the state ethics, or would you expect it to happen?
Here's the issue with regard to any ethics opinion that's going to be asked. It has to be asked by the people involved. And we're talking about the 2 mayoral appointments, and I do agree that they have incredible credentials. Mm-hmm. The issue is whether or not they are going to act upon any situation that poses to them a potential for a conflict of interest. And in order to respond to that, only they, in a confidential manner, approach the Ethics Commission, tell them all the facts that are involved, and ask their opinion as to whether or not they should step aside with regard to that particular issue. And even though you may foresee a potential for a conflict of interest, it doesn't necessarily mean that they are in a conflict of interest until such time as the Ethics Commission says, sorry, you can't respond to that particular incident for one reason or another. Either it helps the corporation, nonprofit corporation that you're a member of, or the bank that you're a member of, and therefore you can't vote. Same thing may be true if it's another situation, but I can't continue to give you examples because that's the duty of the individuals who will sit as appointees in this particular position to get from the Ethics Commission on a case-by-case basis. Does that answer your question?
Yes,
Council?
thank you. Thank you very much.
Any other questions for the city solicitor? No? Okay. From the chair, I will say that you're all set, Mr. McNaught. I'd say that we've done the diligence. The credentials of the 2 people coming off the table are exactly what we're looking for. We had people here this evening that were speaking in support of one of the candidates, and we've all met them. I think we've covered our bases. I'm in support of it. I think also the issue of residents, I've said this before, but from the chair I'll say that I think we have an obligation to make sure that we get Malden residents on boards and commissions. So it's certainly appropriate that people who are from Malden have a preference for things. But I don't necessarily believe that we always have to have an absolute right for a person to be living in the city of Malden to be sitting on these boards. And so we have, in a number of cases, that, and this is what's been pointed out this evening. So I think we're in good shape here. Did you want to say something, Councilor O'Malley? What's your reason for abstaining, Councilor? Councilor O'Malley is asking to abstain from the vote. Which vote? Which vote are you talking about?
Both votes. Both votes for the next 2 votes. So I would like to request to abstain. Now, obviously, my opinion is not a legal opinion by any means, but I do believe that the 2 ordinances are in conflict, at least for me personally, and I would like to request to abstain. I do believe that we should change the existing ordinance because I think it's important to allow people with strong Malden connections to serve on our boards. I think there are a number of instances when this has happened. The late Mayor Jim Conway, he sat on the liquor licensing board after he moved out of the city. Our city physician, Dr. Singh, is a doctor here in Malden. He probably spends the vast majority of his time here in Malden. He's not a Malden resident. The parking director and the jack of all trades that has made the City Hall project occur, Ron Hogan, he's not a Malden resident. Eric Rubin, our director of facilities, who has done an amazing job making sure that all of our schools are maintained, not a Malden resident. Our city solicitor, Catherine Fallon, not a Malden resident, does a great job in the legal department. So I do believe that there is a benefit to allowing members and people who have a strong Malden connection to serve on boards and commissions, particularly when they have a really deep expertise and special connection to Malden. But because, in my opinion, I do believe the 2 ordinances are in conflict, I would request to abstain. respectfully.
Are you? I get a question about that, I guess. When there's a request to abstain, it's, you know, if you've got some reason that you can't vote for a particular motion on the table because of your legal status or what have you, then a vote to abstain is offered by the person and voted on by the council. But if you disagree with the appointment, then the appropriate thing to do is vote against it as opposed to abstaining. So that's what, you know, we all have difficult votes to make, either for it or you're against it. And so I guess I'd ask you if there's a little bit more that you could share with us about, for a reason to ask for an abstention. And seeing a conflict after we've gotten the opinion, I think needs a little bit more clarification. Can you help us with that, Councilor O'Malley?
There are others in front of me if they want to say.
I just want to make a point of clarification that we do have a rule on this. Are Rule 18 members to vote unless...
So, hold on a second. Councilor... You want to make a comment, Councilor Winslow?
I can.
I do want to just. I would like to read what the rule is. Rule 18.01, except when excluded by interest, every member, including the president, shall vote on all questions. I guess I don't know if we would have Councilor McNaught rule, but is interest? Does that mean it has to be a conflict of interest, or is just don't feel like voting on it? So that would be. I don't know if that's the interpretation of the rule or interpretation of the chair, that you have to have a conflict of interest, or can you just not vote? So, yeah. So I guess I asked for a ruling for the chair on that rule of whether.
Well, that's why I was asking the person who was asking for the vote to give an explanation. I don't think that there is a conflict of interest. I think the body can vote. I was just looking for. Let me just ask Councilor O'Malley if there's anything else you'd like to share with us before we take the vote.
Thank you, Chair. So it does say members to vote. It says except excluded by interest. It doesn't say conflict of interest in there. It just says excluded by interest. Every member, including the president, shall vote on all questions. I personally do not agree with the opinion that we've been provided. I'm not a lawyer, so I can't necessarily question it, but me personally, I am not comfortable voting when it appears that the two ordinances that we have are in conflict. And I think that there are a number of reasons why it would make sense that before we act on this matter now, we look to correct the ordinances so that they are no longer in conflict.
Okay.
But if that's not the will of the body, I understand.
A couple of other, okay, thank you, Councilor O'Malley. Councilor Crowe?
Thank you, Councilor. I actually just want some other clarity. And the two that you mentioned, former Mayor Conway, it is written in that ordinance that all members need to be Malden residents, except if they were already on a board and they end up moving out when that ordinance was written, because the ordinance always did not say they all had to be Malden residents. So when that ordinance was enacted, we did have people that were not Malden residents. They could remain on the board. And again, as you mentioned about Dr. Singh, that's why they are under the exceptions. All the other people that you mentioned are department heads, and they're only on boards and commissions by virtue of their employment here in the city. So being on a board and a commission is different than being an employee or a department head that sits on a board or commission by virtue of their employment and their position within the city. So these would be the Affordable Housing Trust would become one of those exceptions, like someone that's already on a board or commission that does not live in the city but was on there when they didn't have to, or the Board of Health doctor and the Affordable Housing Trust.
So I'm going to stop. Councilor Kamel, did you want to say something?
Yeah. So first of all, just a question of mechanics here. If the request to abstain was granted, there's 8 of us right now. For either of these to go, what's that? For either of these to go forward, right now we need 5 votes, is that correct? If we have an abstention, does that now knock us down to 7 and we need 4 votes?
We just need a majority vote. Just a majority.
What happens if we have if somebody abstains? Down to 7. So then the number of votes goes from 5 to 4 that's required. So, right, I'm just verifying that. And secondly, I'm going to have to agree if the is there only 6 votes?
Would you go ahead with your comment?
Yeah. So if there's, I'm just going to agree that this seems to be a disagreement with the legal finding as opposed to having an interest in the vote. So for the abstention, I will vote no on that.
You'll vote no on what? On his request to abstain. You'll vote no. Okay. Let me take that one off. Councilor Winslow for the. Councilor Winslow, do you have anything new to say? I mean, you've spoken 3 or 4 times. I just want to know if there's anything new that you want to add.
I guess just I agree with the legal opinion of that.
Okay.
I mean, just as a lawyer, it's standard the standard opinion of what a lawyer would. It's very standard in law. I mean, there's always conflicts in law.
Okay, I'm going to stop you. I don't think we need to. I don't think. Councilors, let's not argue the question whether Councilor O'Malley can abstain or not, whether we want to vote. That's the issue that's before us. Councilor DiMaria, you can weigh in.
Thank you, Councilor Anderson. Look, at the end of the day, if we do have to clean up that ordinance, I agree that maybe we did try to do that and it failed a couple of years ago. But the question at hand and the priority at hand is to get this affordable housing, these members in and working. That's what we need to do. So I certainly will look at that ordinance and bring it back to the table if anybody wants to sponsor that. But the task at hand is to move these either up or down. So that's what I have to say. Thank you.
Okay, now, so let me just see if I can clarify things. So Councilor O'Malley has withdrawn his request to abstain from this vote.
But I would like to explain how.
But you would like to make a comment about it.
I will.
Go right ahead.
So I'd like to say that I do believe that the rules matter, and I just have a differing opinion. And personally, that does create a conflict within me. It doesn't create a conflict of interest in that there is anything like that, but I personally believe that I have a conflict voting for this with these 2 competing ordinances. I do believe that voting present would be an option, and when you do that, your vote goes with the prevailing side. So unfortunately, because the 2 ordinances are in conflict, I feel like I have to vote no. Not because I believe that Brian Slater or Angie Lou are not qualified. I actually believe they're very much qualified. Brian is a board member of Housing Families. It's a nonprofit in Malden, which primarily serves displaced families who live in Malden. I think that is a strong Malden connection. I do believe that there's a justification for him to serve on a Affordable Housing Trust Fund board. I think he has the expertise to be able to be a great member of that board. Angie Liu is the executive director of ACDC, the Asian Community Development Corporation, which is the only affordable housing community development corporation currently operating in Malden. They have an office here, and they, in addition to that, have a youth leadership program called A-Voice, which I have personally worked with and have done great work on Fitzgerald Park on Exchange Street, and we're now working on a traffic calming measure with Councilor Winslow on Route 60. I do believe that Angie would also be a great addition to the Affordable Housing Trust Fund. But I feel like I have to vote against these 2, even though I believe they are qualified, because I do believe the ordinances are in conflict.
Okay.
So I just wanted to explain where my vote's coming from.
And that's why I raised the question, Councilor O'Malley. I think, we all have these are difficult votes that we make all the time. You know, we either vote yes or no, and that's what we're elected to do. And if you don't agree with the appointments, you vote no. If you agree with the appointments, we vote yes. So it's on the docket. So we will call the roll on the appointments of Brian Slater and Angie. Should we do them separately? Do any need to do them separately? Let's do them separately. On the appointment of Brian Slater, the clerk will call the roll.
Okay, on paper 3-20, mayoral appointment Brian Slater, 195 Beach Ave, Melrose, Mass. as a member of the Affordable Housing Trust Fund Board. Anderson.
Yes.
Kamel.
Yes.
Condon.
Yes.
Crow.
Yes.
DeMaria.
Yes.
Linehan.
Yes.
O'Malley.
No.
Winslow.
Yes.
Passes 7-1.
So that appointment is approved by the City Council. Next order of business is the mayoral appointment of Angie Liu.
Paper 4-20, mayoral appointment Angie Liu, 35 Mount Vernon Street, Unit 1, Boston, as a member of the Affordable Housing Trust Fund Board. Anderson.
Yes.
Kamel.
Yes.
Condon.
Yes.
Crow.
Yes.
DeMaria.
Yes.
Linehan.
Yes.
O'Malley.
No.
Winslow.
Yes.
Passes
Okay.
7-1.
So we have both of those appointments confirmed. The docket is clear. Any requests for personal privilege? I see Councilor Crow is the first to.
Thank you. Actually, I would like to request a moment of silence for Joe Lawless, who had his funeral mass this morning. And Joe is a longtime Malden resident. He was the deputy mayor of Malden under Mayor Conway, and he served as the deputy executive director of the Malden Housing Authority. He was on the board of the Immigrant Learning Center. He was a library trustee. He was the chair of the Democratic City Committee for many years. And that's only a short list of some of his accomplishments, and he'll be greatly lost, a great loss to the community. He's actually an assistant city solicitor's cousin as well. But so I'd like to make a motion. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. McNaught, would you want to say something?
I am incredibly proud of my cousin Joe Lawless. Today was a tough day because today was his funeral mass, and Joe and I grew up together. He unfortunately lost his dad when he was in the 4th grade. His dad was a very learned man, an attorney, U.S. attorney. His mother was the former secretary to Mayor Kelleher at one time, and he was an incredibly bright, wonderful man. And he and Fran lived in Malden their entire married lives, and he was just a great person. So many people came to me today telling me that he was a mentor of sorts. Mm-hmm. Well, he was more of a mentor to people than I ever knew, but to me, he was a delightful, delightful companion for all my life. I am incredibly proud of Joe Lawless. I am so sorry we lost him. And Fran, I hope to God that you live in peace knowing that he was such a great guy. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
I appreciate that.
Thank you. And just from the chair, I would say that I just learned about Joe's passing this morning when the mayor had mentioned it at the State of the City, and was shocked and sorrowed that Joe's passing. Joe has touched all of our lives, I believe, and I echo your comments, and may he rest in peace. And this moment of silence on behalf of Mr. Joe Lawless. Thank you. Councilor DeMaria.
Oops, that's so hard to follow. But two things. I want to thank Councilor Anderson for chairing us tonight and being our substitute council president. He did a great job. Thank you. And I also want to wish someone in the audience a very happy birthday. Maria Louise's birthday today. So she does so much work for this city.
Can we sing?
Yeah, we should do something.
Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Maria. Happy birthday to you.
Thank you.
And many happy returns. Councilor Winslow.
Are you done? Okay. Well, we're sitting here in front of the election booths right here. So, folks, the preliminary election is on Tuesday, and you can actually come down to the senior center and vote early. So, just reminding people that we're in the midst of election. So, come on down and vote. Great.
Very good point. Councilor O'Malley.
Thank you, Chair. Yep, you shut me off. So thank you, Chair. Tomorrow night at 6:15, Malden Arts will be hosting their Phase 2 Art Line meeting at J. Malden Center, which is located where City Hall used to be. The exact address on Pleasant Street, I'm not sure. So please come out if you want to participate in Malden's largest ever public art campaign. And just with that, I'd like to wish everyone a happy carnival. I think Lent, Ash Wednesday is tomorrow, so enjoy your meat.
Thank you. The docket is clear. On Councilor Connor's motion that we adjourn, all those in favor say aye. Opposed say nay. We will stand adjourned.